to contribute to improving regional integration. In this regard, the aquifers, the bi-ocean corridor, hydroelectric power stations, and navigation on our rivers are delicate processes of balance between integration and the sovereignty of our peoples. We are aware that the progress achieved towards integration, that progress has been achieved towards integration. However, we are far from being satisfied, and we are making progress with courage and determination. Latin America is the region of the world with the highest potential for development. However, we will only be able to develop this potential if we respect ourselves, working together and in harmony, and by respecting each other. Since the last century, the 20th century, we have been moving as a country into a process whereby we are building and strengthening our democratic institutions. This year, we renewed this in our country with a transparent electoral process with broad participation from our citizens, where the Paraguayan people expressed their will with a firm democratic vocation and vested their trust in the rule of law. Paraguay today is living through the longest period of democratic coexistence, with more than 35 uninterrupted years of the values of free, participatory and pluralist democracy, convinced that there is no other acceptable system than being unshakable in upholding human rights and liberty. Paraguay, the country of the prose of Augusto Roa Bastos, the universal music of José Asunción Flores, and guitar with its dulcet tones and Nyanduti lace, Berta Roas. This country has a real rhythm that was born in the spirit of the Guarani language. Now, we call this thing Guarania, and it goes around the world. It's a great ambassador for us. My country values peace and sustainable development and integration between peoples, because we are a country that has been reborn from the ashes, following a war of extermination that stunted the early development process of a nation that, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, had already developed one of the first interurban railways of South America. We had shipyards and iron foundries, but above all, we had great human capital and education. Then the massacre in 1870 that annihilated 90% of the male population of Paraguay. The reconstruction process after this was headed up by patriotic compatriots without financial nor technological support, and with a small flow of European migrants that arrived and established themselves in the country despite this bad record. However, as Bernardino Caballero said in his presidential message in 1884, Paraguay has the undeniable merit of having risen from the rubble without having requested support from the outside. We have been steadfast in this, the virtue of the strong, and triumphed, being the maker of our own destiny. It's impossible to not mention the fundamental role of Paraguayan women in their heroic task to rebuild the country. This is not in vain, because Paraguayan women are recognized as the greatest in the Americas, and they are the cornerstone of our nation. With decisive and firm steps forward, Paraguay continues to strengthen its institutionality and its economy. Having been the poorest country in South America for decades, today we are a middle to high income country with high credibility for the international financial markets that are bring us close to the so yearned for investment graduation, with high standards for production, certified production in line with international standards, and transparency, especially in macroeconomic stability and fiscal discipline and monetary discipline, in an ongoing effort to improve public management. Dear friends of the international community, Paraguay is stood to attention and is ready to discharge its mission before history. Thus, we are talking about the rise of a giant. However, we are not saying this in an expansionist way or a grandiose way, but rather with a firm conviction of a proud people, proud of its roots and our heroic history, our courageousness and the profound conviction of our destiny of greatness. Thank you very much.
Thank the President of the Republic of Paraguay for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Dina Ercilia Boluarte Zegara, President of the Republic of Peru. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome Her Excellency Dina Ercilia Boluarte Zegara, President of the Republic of Peru, and to invite her to address the Assembly.
Señor Presidente de la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas.
Distinguished President of the General Assembly of the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, delegates from the nations of the world. I come from Peru, a country with a long history and vast cultural wealth, which has been the cradle of civilization on the American continent, and whose leadership I assumed with firmness and courage on December 7th, 2022, after a coup d'etat in the midst of a political and social crisis that we were able to overcome within the framework of our Constitution. Today, I have the honor of being the first constitutional female president of the Republic, as my country has existed for 201 years. And today, I lead my country's delegation to the United Nations General Assembly. I am grateful to the international community for its recognition. Peru is once again present on the international stage alongside the peoples of the world. I'm a woman from the provinces. I speak Quechua, and I was born in the heights of the southern Peruvian Andes. And I lead a government that, in accordance with the law and in the face of titanic challenges, both from nature as well as on the international stage, has brought back stability and hope to a country that seeks to achieve economic development along with social justice. I would like to begin this message by paying a tribute to women, to girls, adolescents, and particularly to my sisters in Peru, a well-deserved tribute. Amanda Warmi Makaya Kachunchu. This is what we say in Quechua, which in the rest of the world means no more violence against women. Mr. President, Peru is a country that respects democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and international law. For this reason, Peru actively promotes Latin American integration and is firmly committed to cooperation between countries. Peru promotes peace, and to achieve peace, it is necessary to implement the Charter of the United Nations and to uphold it in all circumstances. For this reason, Mr. President, we defend the principle of respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of all states. Mr. President, as a daughter of the southern Andean region of my country, I have known firsthand the suffering caused by poverty. That is why I'm fully aware that, as we reaffirmed in the political declaration adopted yesterday, eradicating poverty is the greatest challenge facing the world and constitutes an essential prerequisite for sustainable development. This is the main objective of my government, and it is why we are committed to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda. Today, in this forum, I wish to reaffirm Peru's voice so that the international community gives the highest priority to eradicating poverty. It is a commitment on which we cannot and should not give up. In Peru, we're adopting policies to confront not only monetary poverty, but also multidimensional poverty, among other important measures such as access to drinking water and basic sanitation. In the 9 months of my government's existence, we have unblocked more than 100 paralyzed projects in order to provide water to the sisters and brothers in my country. The crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, growing geopolitical tensions, conflicts, and growing food prices are overwhelming our people, and they have slowed down our potential for growth and development. If these trends continue, as Secretary General Antonio Guterres tells us, nearly 600 million people will continue to live in extreme poverty in 2030, and only 1/3 of countries will reach the goal of having their national poverty levels. We cannot accept such a scenario, Mr. President. The time is now. Either we progress together or we all condemn ourselves to failure. United, we will achieve everything. Disunited, we will all lose. And this brings us to the next challenge. Our development agenda has the motto, Manan Pitapas Kipapi Sekispa, which in Quechua means leaving no one behind. However, Mr. President, today, millions of human beings are displaced and on the move, sometimes literally carrying their families and their meager belongings in search of well-being or simply survival in the face of conflict, unemployment, and extreme poverty. The current situation of human mobility must prompt the international community to cooperate on the bilateral, regional, and multilateral levels. Peru has been making enormous efforts in this area, but it is only through international cooperation that we will be able to achieve safe, orderly, and regular migration. Mr. President, health, as we know, is not a problem for a handful of individuals. It is a collective issue. My country was one of the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, which took the lives of more than 200,000 of our fellow citizens, and which revealed the gaps and shortcomings of our health system. And this year, we have faced resurgencies of the dengue, measles, and polio epidemics, as well as an outbreak of Guillain-Barré syndrome. That is why my government is firmly committed to guaranteeing free and universal healthcare access to all without exception. To achieve this, we are in the process of expanding our national vaccination program's coverage. We are reinforcing health infrastructure and equipment. We have been able to achieve more than 1,900,000 children aged from 2 months to 5 years against polio and measles. And we continue to work tirelessly to unblock hospital projects that had been paralyzed due to apathy and corruption from prior governments. We have also made the prevention and treatment of cancer a national goal, and currently 20 out of Peru's 26 regions have at least one oncological service. It is possible to work and to achieve things as long as the political will is there. In these areas, international cooperation must ensure quality health products and services accessible to all, and especially for developing countries where the gaps are much wider. In Peru, it is with great concern that we observe the growing internationalization of criminal networks fueled by the corruption of past governments, which have undermined the credibility of institutions and democracy, and which are affecting the development and well-being of our citizens. That is why it is crucial to reinforce our common work. We cannot let our guard down against crime, organized crime, and drug trafficking. These problems affect us all, and we must all be part of the solution. Our children and grandchildren are at risk of experiencing the hell that a triple environmental crisis would bring now that we are entering this era of global boiling as the climate change, loss of biodiversity, and pollution put our very existence as humanity at risk. Peru is facing these phenomena with a sense of urgency and determination. At the beginning of the year, heavy rains affected northern Peru, followed by the onslaught of Cyclone Yaku. In the south, droughts have seriously harmed people, agriculture, and livestock, on top of recurring anomalous waves in the Pacific, which prevent the regular operations of our fishing ports. Finally, we have the growing threat of the coastal El Niño phenomenon after the impact of the global El Niño. An action-focused and prevention-focused approach is urgent. Therefore, from this high rostrum, I call for solidarity and international cooperation. For the first time, a government in my country has undertaken a major campaign against the global El Niño phenomenon with an investment of 4 billion soles, that is to say more than $1 billion. We have also joined the early alerts for all initiative presented by the Secretary General, so that by the end of 2027, all the inhabitants of the planet can be protected against meteorological phenomenon. This, ladies and gentlemen, will help save many lives. In addition, Mr. President, allow me to make a proposal for a compact, a commitment to international cooperation and action in order to immediately address the impact of meteorological phenomena such as El Niño, a pact based on solidarity, resilience, and interdependence. Today, it is Peru that is facing El Niño. Tomorrow, nature may affect a different location, but united, as I always say in my country, we can move forward. Let us make this pact, a pact for the world, a pact for life. Developing countries have made progress in reducing carbon emissions, but we continue to be the most affected by climate disasters. Last month, the 8 Amazonian countries held a presidential summit during which we agreed on measures for the conservation and sustainable use of the Amazon, as well as the fight against deforestation and urgent action to avoid a point of no return. Peru presented its vision of an Amazon with a human face. With a human face because the Amazon, which constitutes 61% of Peru's territory, is not just a sanctuary occupied solely by nature. It is in fact home to 5 million Peruvians. It is still possible to limit the increase in global temperature to within 1.5 degrees Celsius. as we agreed in the Paris Agreement. But to do this, bold actions will be necessary. This implies that developed countries not only adopt more ambitious emissions reduction goals, but also that they honor their commitments in terms of technology transfer and climate financing. Today, more than ever, it is urgent to mobilize the $100 billion annually for climate action in developing countries, in accordance with the commitment that was made. It is also crucial to establish the loss and damage fund as agreed upon at the last conference of the parties. Mr. President, here in this hall, I wish to inform you that the Peruvian presidency has submitted a draft treaty whose goal is to protect the marine environment against plastic pollution. In my country, Mr. President, 48 indigenous languages are spoken, and more than 6 million citizens identify as members of one of the indigenous original peoples of Peru, and more than 800,000 identify as Afro-Peruvian. Promoting the full exercise of their rights is a challenge that we share with many other countries. And we have an essential responsibility to continue seeking their inclusion, their well-being, to continue providing them with quality services, promoting respect for their rights, their cultures, and their languages. Mr. President, distinguished delegates, as we are on the verge of commemorating the bicentennial of our consolidation as an independent republic, Peru reiterates its commitment to continue contributing to peace, development, and the conservation of the environment. This is what we have done during our presence in the Andean community. This is what we are doing within the Pacific Alliance, and this is what we will continue doing next year as president of the APEC Forum. We remain determined in our process of accession to the OECD and our participation in the Americas Partnership for Economic Prosperity, or APEP, and we have begun talks with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, with a view to being partners in development. I reiterate my invitation to all countries to continue investing in Peru and trusting in Peru. Our country is a country of hope. We await you with clear and transparent rules of the game, with stability and legal security, low inflation, with solid international reserves, and our sole objective is working for the sustained growth of all, but particularly for the most vulnerable. Mr. President, the government of Peru, faithful to its commitment to the United Nations and in line with its Republican tradition, joins with firmness and determination the global goal to strengthen the fight against climate change, to defend peace, democracy, full respect for human rights, international law, sustainable development, and the prosperity to which our people aspire, as it is what is just. Which means, in Quechua, let us work together with one heart, with one thought, and one desire. Long live humanity. Thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Peru for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort Her Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Felipe Jacinto Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Filipe Jacinto Nyusi, President of the Republic of Mozambique, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. Dennis Francis, Chairperson of the session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Engineer Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, heads of states and government, distinguished representatives of member states, esteemed leaders of the system of the United Nations Organization, distinguished invited guests, Excellencies. I begin my remarks by extending on behalf of the people of Mozambique our heartfelt condolences to the peoples of the sisterly nations of Morocco and Libya for the tragedies that befell these two sister African countries. I take this opportunity to reiterate the Mozambican people and government's gratitude for the unanimous vote for the election of Mozambique as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council. Our participation at the Security Council has enabled us to share our experience in peace building and national reconciliation, thus contributing towards fostering international peace and security. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, in September 2015 at this very hall, we adopted the Sustainable Development Goals that encapsulate the Agenda 2030. As leaders, we committed on behalf of our peoples the commitment to reduce poverty in 16 key areas and establish a better world for all without leaving no one behind. The progress report that we considered yesterday at the high-level panel shows clearly that the world continues to be faced with various interconnected crises that undermine the delivery of the Agenda 2030. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, natural disasters arising from climate change, and armed conflicts, including terrorism and violent extremism, causes millions of people to continue living under poverty without adequate food and without access to education, food and health services. It is true that the adversities I have referred are a cause for regression in progress that we were making in the implementation of Agenda 2030 since 2015. However, the main reason for lack of success of this agenda remains the absence of trust and solidarity between those who have a lot and those who have little or almost nothing at all. Even among those who have a lot, rather than building trust and solidarity, they spend their resources in investing in a competition fueled by trust. Therefore, I commend Your Excellency Dr. Dennis Francis, Chairperson of this session, for the theme you have suggested to us on rebuilding peace, revitalizing global solidarity. It is a critical theme to realize Agenda 2030 on sustainable development towards peace, progress, and prosperity for sustainability of humanity. Your Excellencies, in my statement, I'll try to focus attention on peace and security, counter-terrorism, climate change, energy transition, blue economy, and environmental conservation in tandem with the theme of this General Assembly. On peace and security, various regions of the world are grappling with a very vicious cycle of armed conflicts and instability, particularly in Africa. Thousands of precious lives are lost. The number of refugees and internally displaced persons have increased to more than 50% in the last year, despite multilateral efforts of several peace initiatives at the United Nations Security Council level and regional organization. War in Ukraine and other regions prevail and endanger peace, security, and global economy. My own country, Mozambique, experienced cycle of armed conflicts, sometimes triggered by forces alien to national interests, but its settlement has been possible only based on constructive dialogue founded on trust and mutual respect. That is how we adopted the new Provincial Decentralization Act, now under implementation, and in August 2019 we signed the Peace and Reconciliation Accord, also known as Maputo Accord. In June this year we closed the last camp of Renamo, a formerly armed opposition party, marking the conclusion of the disarmament and demobilization phase. The crucial phase that follows is the reintegration of ex-combatants into the society, including payment of pensions, although not provided for by law. I would like to express our gratitude as this process counts on the support of the United Nations and other multilateral and bilateral partners. Terrorists, Excellencies, while we seek to close one chapter of the peace and national reconciliation process, Mozambique is confronted by the nefarious phenomenon of terrorism, particularly in Cabo Delgado province in the north of the country. In March this year, during Mozambique's rotational chairpersonship of the Security Council, we had the opportunity to share at length our experience of countering terrorism. On one hand, our strategy focuses on strengthening combat operations by the Mozambican Defense and Security Forces with an initial support of the Rwandan contingent and SADC multilateral force, also named SAMIM. We have been achieving tangible success on the ground, though terrorists continue to create terror and fear in sporadic way in isolated villages. With the improvement of safety and tranquility, populations have been returning in large numbers to their home areas, resuming their normal life. This is a pioneer experience of combining bilateral and multilateral interventions. It is also an example of solution of African problems, first by the Africans themselves. However, the issue arising is the need for a substantial support to these countries that, in a direct manner, countering terrorism with us in Mozambique in order to render the ongoing operation sustainable. At this juncture, the challenge is reconstruction of infrastructures and consolidation of social cohesion, whose actions are undertaken within the framework of Northern Region Resilience and Integrated Development Program, PREDIM, which counts on the support of partners. We would also like to appeal for your solidarity in this other component of countering terrorism. Climate change. Climate change constitutes the main crisis of mankind of this century. This is not a new discovery. Therefore, many species around this subject almost repeat themselves. For a number of decades ago, scientific evidence shows that our planet is at the eve of climate catastrophe. However, despite this evidence and commitments assumed yearly during various conferences on climate change, the situation has been aggravating. The same applies to conflicts. The cause for climate change is lack of confidence or trust, solidarity associated with selfishness of some countries. Countries that pollute The enriching of these countries is costing the price of disgrace for countries that contribute less, with pollution that coincidentally are the poorest country. As a consequence, heat waves, cyclones, floods, droughts, earthquakes, the rise of the sea level, uncontrolled fire, and other extreme phenomena have become increasingly frequent all over the globe. In the case of Mozambique, due to its geographic location, the country suffers cyclically of the devastating impact of natural disasters. The largest cyclones, Idai, Kenneth, and Freddy, caused hundreds of losses of life, highly costly damages, and losses to the tune of billions of dollars. So far, we have not yet been able to recover just 1/3 of damages recorded. However, support from partners have been well below the pledges and beyond the requirements. In many cases, when these assistance comes, partners have preferred to manage the funds outside agreed mechanisms with the government, causing overlaps in areas of programs which have little impact on the communities. As a consequence, substantial portion of funds are spent in capacity building, conferences, bureaucratic issues, rather than allocating funds to affected people, which once again shows lack of trust and solidarity. As a way of mitigating the suffering of the people, we have been promoting domestic solutions towards consolidating a disaster management system with the involvement of public, private stakeholders, civil society, and local communities, focusing on prevention and adaptation. This way, we have managed to reduce the impact of natural disasters, a fact that has merited the recognition of Mozambique at SADC, African Union, and UN agencies. Mr. President, Excellencies, energy transition. Energy transition is a global imperative aimed at building more resilient and sustainable societies. However, we advocate that energy transition should be fair and must work as a launchpad to enable poor countries to find a window of opportunity in the diversification of the energy mix in order to consolidate their economic base. Energy transition requires large investments in power generation projects from clean sources. Once again, we invite the most industrialized countries to be to show more solidarity by implementing their climate fund commitments. Mozambique is a regional reference for the diversity of its energy matrix that includes hydropower dams, in particular Kaurabasa, solar power stations and wind power stations, and construction works for Mpanda Nkua are now underway. Last year, Mozambique joined the group of liquefied natural gas producing and exporting countries, an important step towards accelerating energy transition. Currently, the energy sector is dominated by hydropower, with a capacity of 2,172 megawatts, solar with 95 megawatts, gas 441 megawatts, and diesel with 120 megawatts, with the possibility of operations of Temane Thermal Power Station over the last quarter of 2024, with the capacity of 450 megawatts, and with a longer maturity cycle, the new Mpanda Nkua hydropower station with a capacity of 1,500 megawatts to be generated by 2030. Likewise, Mozambique bets on the development of blue economy to optimize resources from the extensive exclusive economic zone along the coastline of 2,700 kilometers. Environment conservation. We are also a country with a robust environmental legislation that features major international conventions, including the Paris Agreement, the Convention on the Protection of Endangered Species Sites, among others. Within the framework of the nationally determined commitment NCD in 2021, Mozambique became the first African country to receive payments from the World Bank Fund for reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. Last year, we launched a regional initiative on the sustainable management of the Miyombo forests that culminated with the adoption of the Maputo Declaration, which was endorsed by 11 SADC member states. Miyombo woodland is the largest tropical forest ecosystem of the world, where three species are predominant, which covers more than 2,574 kilometers along the Great Zambezi Basin across 8 countries of Southern Africa. Under this initiative, which intends to project nature, we count on the support of bilateral and multilateral partners in conservation of the Miyombo forest that can largely contribute to capture carbon on the planet. Excellencies, the challenges currently faced by humanity are huge. However, solutions are within our reach. We, the leaders present here, have the historic responsibility of saving the planet for the benefit of future generations. The priority areas requiring urgent actions are clearly identified with the matrix of already defined solutions, of which we highlight 3. First, we need to renew the political will and redouble efforts to accelerate the achievement of targets of Agenda 2030. We do not need to come up with analytical speeches. The most important is action by all of us with vigor and using available resources. Secondly, we have to intensify integrated policies with concrete actions to eradicate poverty, reduce inequality, preserve nature by empowering women, the youth, and other vulnerable groups. Thirdly, we must strengthen international partnership and multilateralism, taking the United Nations system as a basis. However, 78 years later, the world has experienced profound transformation that require deep reforms. I conclude by appealing for the existence of a more inclusive international financial system that is guided by transparent rules and mutually beneficial rules, where Africa participates as a partner that has a lot to offer to the world and not only a warehouse that supplies cheap commodities to countries or international multinationals, corporations that dominate the international market. To achieve this, we need to retrieve trust and mutual respect between states, which are the sacred principles of the United Nations Charter. Only with trust and mutual respect and solidarity we can build a better world of peace, safe and sustainable that deliver welfare for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Mozambique for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Laurentino Cortizo Cohen, President of the Republic of Panama. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Laurentino Cortizo Cohen, President of the Republic of Panama, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Su Excelencia,
Your Excellency, Mr. Dennis Francis, President of the 78th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Your Excellency Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, distinguished delegates. I'm delighted to be here before you at this assembly that gathers us with a view to finding more effective ways of addressing the pressing problems of global society. The Republic of Panama, as a founding member of this organization, reiterates its firm commitment to the search for solutions based on dialogue and on mutual respect that contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security, which are essential for the development and well-being of humanity. Panama is the bridge of the world. It is a crossroads at the center of the Americas, where all roads converge, thanks to our exceptional air and maritime connectivity, which is the best in Latin America and the Caribbean. Furthermore, the Republic of Panama is committed to achieving the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they are included within the government plan of my administration. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 50 months that we have been in office, our government has focused on public policies that allow us to address the huge challenge, laying the foundations to reduce poverty and inequality in order to provide the most disadvantaged populations an opportunity to achieve the social and economic conditions that enable them to live decently. Making headway in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is an inescapable responsibility that compels us to pay attention to the cause and effect relationship between them. We must ask ourselves, how does the climate crisis have an impact on the 3 first Sustainable Development Goals? Can we really end poverty, achieve zero hunger and health and well-being in the midst of this serious drought that is afflicting the planet, as well as the floods and the devastating fires that are razing huge areas of land and the rise in sea levels? Let us think about the conclusions of the IPCC report that warns us of an escalation of changes to the climate system, unprecedented escalations that are leading us to extreme situations that pose a grave threat to the survival of life on Earth. The climate crisis is a ticking time bomb, and time is running out for all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, the commitment of Panama to human existence is something that has been shown and demonstrated with the decisions that we have made and the consequential actions that we have engaged in. We are a country with huge water resources. Our coasts are bathed by 2 huge oceans, and this makes us particularly aware of the importance of water for our population and for life on Earth. Panama has made extraordinary efforts to preserve our seas, achieving the goal of 30% protected 9 years before 2030, and we have even increased it to 54% this year. Panama, and this is not rhetoric, but rather we have done this with facts, with actions, has become a blue leader. And I can also tell you that Panama is one of the 7 countries in the world that has been declared to be carbon negative. Ladies and gentlemen, in Panama we have established a carbon footprint reduction program with a national green hydrogen and derivatives strategy. Furthermore, since we have been in office in Panama, we have brought in an ambitious energy transition agenda, with the goal being to find and to develop accessible energy that is not polluting in order to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by at least 24% for 2050. Panama is one of the 15 countries in the world that is most exposed to climate risks and natural risks. In fact, we have already seen in our country the first case of climate displacement when we had to relocate the population of the Karti Sugdup island due to rising sea levels. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reaffirm on behalf of the Republic of Panama that the Panamanian people successfully rose to the task of the Panama Canal operation in 1999, and we increased its capacity in 2016. I wish to express to the nations of the world that Panama is committed to continuing to operate the canal in a safe, efficient, reliable and competitive manner, as we have done so far, and we have done this very well. Ladies and gentlemen, Panama, as a country that makes effective contributions to environmental protection, asks the most polluting countries here at this General Assembly to respect the commitments made to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have also seen on repeated occasions at the General Assembly and at the meetings of the Conference of the Parties, the COPs, the United Nations COPs, that countries commit to making changes that later are not delivered. Ladies and gentlemen, human development is the greatest priority and provides populations opportunities for a more decent life within their own countries. That way, they wouldn't have to abandon their countries and embark on irregular emigration, exposing themselves to human rights violations and often losing their own lives. In this regard, the problem of irregular migration must be addressed multilaterally, with a focus on the respect for human rights and under the principles of solidarity and shared responsibility, with the aspiration being to safeguard the integrity of human life in a safe and orderly manner. Panama is working actively in collaboration with several countries in the region to implement programs to improve care and protection for irregular migrants who enter our country over the border with Colombia, crossing the dangerous Darien jungle, which is the largest natural park in the whole of Central America. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is making colossal efforts to provide solidarity to these irregular migrants, whose number is increasing every year, and this is forcing Panama to allocate significant resources to humanitarian aid. This is an unsustainable situation. It's not something we asked for, it's inhumane and is a painful humanitarian tragedy. We are seeing suffering and death for thousands, hundreds of thousands of migrants who are embarking on this perilous journey. I wish to reiterate to you that this situation is not sustainable. It is a situation that we are victim to and that we are not responsible for. I launch an appeal to the international community to address in its full magnitude the issue of irregular migration. That today is not only concentrated in the Mediterranean, but rather it is a global issue. And the fact is that the Panamanian people currently are being directly affected by it. Ladies and gentlemen, today we reiterate the appeal for dialogue, for peace, and for multilateralism, with respect for international law and for the principles that underpin it, without anything that goes against the well-being of peoples. In many ways, we are in a race against the clock for human survival, and that is the raison d'etre of this organisation that gathers us today, and its actions largely depend on the steps that we take vis-à-vis the future as a global community. Today, as the Panamanian head of state, I wish to express to all of you that Panama wants for the whole world what we want for our own people. That is peace, well-being, justice and development. Thank you very much.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
on behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Panama for the statement he just made, and I ask protocol to please escort His Excellency.
l'Assemblée va entendre la...
The General Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Bola Tinubu, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor of welcoming His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu. President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I invite him to take the floor.
Mr. President, Head of State and Government, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the people of Nigeria, I congratulate you on your well-deserved election as the President of this session of the United Nations General Assembly. We commend your predecessor, His Excellency Chaba Korochi, for his able stewardship of the Assembly also. We also commend His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for his work seeking to forge solutions to humanity's common challenges. This is my first address before the General Assembly. Permit me to say a few words on behalf of Nigeria, my country, on behalf of Africa, my continent, regarding this year's theme. Many proclamations have been made, yet our troubles remain close at hand. Failures in good governance have hindered Africa, but broken promises, unfair treatment, and outright exploitation from abroad have also exerted a heavy toll on our ability to progress. Given this long history, if this year's theme is to mean anything at all, it must mean something special and particular to Africa. In the aftermath of the Second World War, nations gathered in an attempt to rebuild their war-torn societies. A new global system was born, and this great body, the United Nations, was established as a symbol and protector of the aspiration and the finest ideas of humankind. Nations saw that it was in their own interest to help others exceed the rubbles and wasteland of war. Reliable and significant assistance allowed countries emaciated by war to grow into a strong and productive society. The period was a high water mark for trust in global institutions and the belief that humanity had learned the necessary lessons to move forward in global solidarity and harmony. Today, for several decades, Africa has been asking for the same level of political commitment and devotion of resource that described the Marshall Plan. We realize that underlying conditions and causes of economic challenges facing today's Africa are significantly different from those of post-war Europe. We are not asking for identical programs and actions. What we seek is an equal, firm commitment to partnership. We seek enhanced international cooperation with African nations to achieve the 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals. There are 5 points I want to highlight. First, if this year's theme is to have any importance at all and any impact, global institutions, other nations, and their private sector actors must see Africa as not just for Africa, but in the interest of us all as well. Due to both long-standing internal and external factors, Nigerians and Africans' economic structures have been skewed to impede development, industrial expansion, job creation, and the equitable distribution of wealth. If Nigeria is to fulfill its duty to its people, I know, and the rest of Africa, we must create jobs and the belief in a better future for our people. We are pushing for that. We must also lead by example, and we are doing so, to foster economic growth and investors' confidence in Nigeria, and remove the costly and corrupt fuel subsidy while also discarding a noxious exchange rate system in my first few days in office. Other growth and job-oriented firms are in the wings. I'm mindful of the transient hardship that reform can cause. However, it is necessary to go through this phase in order to establish a foundation for durable growth and investment to build the economy our people deserve. We welcome partnership with those who not mind seeing Nigeria and Africa assume larger roles in the global community. The question is not whether Nigeria is open for business. The question is how much of the world is truly open to doing business with Nigeria, and how African is an equal, mutually beneficial manner. Direct investment in critical industries, opening airports to a wider range and larger quantity of African exports, and meaningful debt relief are important aspects of the cooperation we seek. Second, we must affirm democratic governance as the best guarantor of sovereign will and well-being of the people. Military coups are wrong, as in any titled civilian political arrangement that is will perpetuate injustice. The wave-crossing part of Africa does not demonstrate favor towards coup. It is a demand for solution to perennial problem. Let us dig it deeper. Regarding Niger, we are negotiating with the military leaders. As chairman of ECOWAS, I seek to help establish democratic governance in a manner that addresses the political economy challenges confronting that nation, including violent extremists who seek to foment instability in our region. I extend a hand of friendship to all of you who may genuinely support this mission for a democratic governance in that nation. This brings me to my third crucial point. Our entire region is locked in protracted battle against violent extremists. And the turmoil, a dark channel of inhuman commerce has formed. Along the route, everything is for sale. Men, women, and children are seen as chattel. Yet, thousands reach the Sahara, hot and sand, and the Mediterranean cold death in search of a better life. At the same time, mercenaries and extremists with their lethal weapons and vile ideologies invade our region from the north. This harmful traffic undermines the peace and stability of the entire region. African nations will improve our economics so that our people do not risk their life to sweep the floors and streets of other nations. We also shall devote ourselves to disbanding extremist groups on our turf. Yet, to fully contain this threat, the international community must strengthen its commitment to arrest the flow of armed and violent people into West Africa. The fourth important aspect of this global trust and solidarity is to secure the continent's mineral-rich areas from plundering and conflicts. Many such areas have become catacombs of misery and exploitation. The Democratic Republic of Congo has suffered this for decades, despite the strong UN presence there. What happened? The world economy owes the Republic of Congo much, but gives her very little. The mayhem visited on resource-rich areas does not respect national boundaries. Sudan, Mali, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, and the list grow on and on and on. The problem also knocks at Nigeria's door. foreign entities abated by local criminals who aspire to be petty warlords have drafted thousands of people into servitude to illegally mine gold and other resources. Billions of dollars meant to improve the nation's economy now fuel violent enterprises. If left unchecked, they will threaten peace and place national security at a grave danger. Given the extent of this injustice and the high scales involved, many Africans are asking whether the phenomenon is by accident or by design. Members' nations must reply by working with us to deter their farms and nationals from the 21st century pillage of continent riches. Fifth, climate change severely impacts Nigeria and Africa. Northern Nigeria is honored by desert encroachment, hounded from the north, all are arable lands. Our south is pounded by the rising tide of coastal flooding and erosion. In the middle, the rainy season brings flood that kill and displace multitudes. As I lament death at home, I also lament the grave loss of life in Morocco and Libya. The Nigerian people are with you. Please note that. African nations will fight climate change, but must do so on fair and just terms. To achieve the need popular consensus, this campaign must accord with overall economic efforts. In Nigeria, we shall build political consensus by highlighting remedial actions which also promote economic good. Projects such as Green Wall to stop desert encroachment, halting the destruction of our forests by mass production and distribution of gas-burning stoves, and providing employment in local water management and irrigation projects are examples of efforts that equally advance both economic and climate change objectives. Continental efforts regarding climate change will register important victories if established economies were more forthcoming with public and private sector investment for African preferred initiatives. Again, this will go far in demonstrating that global solidarity is real and working. As I'm about to close, let me emphasize Nigeria's objective accord with the guiding principles of this world body: peace, security, human rights, and development. In fundamental ways, nature has been kind to Africa, given abundant land, resources, and creative and industrious people. Yet, man has too often been unkind to fellow man, and this sad tendency has brought sustained hardship to Africa's doorstep. To keep faith with the tenets of this world to this body and the theme of this year's assembly, the poverty of nations must end. The pillage of one nation's resources by overreach of farms and people of stronger nations must end. the will of the people must be respected. This beautiful, generous, and forgiving planet must be protected. As for Africa, we seek to be neither appendage nor patron. We do not wish to replace old shackles with new ones. Instead, we hope to walk the rich African soil and live under the magnificent African sky, free of the wrongs of the past and clear of the associated encumbrances. We desire a beautiful, prosperous, vibrant, democratic living space for our people, where we do it. To the rest of the world, I say, work with us as true friends and partners. Africa is not a problem to be avoided, nor is it to be pitied. Africa is nothing less than the key to the world's future. I thank you for listening.
De l'Assemblée générale, je tiens à remercier.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Nigeria for his statement, and I ask protocol to please escort His Excellency.
The Assembly will now hear an address from His Excellency Mr.
Welcome back from the live telecast. We'll now continue with our regular programs. Stay tuned.
Open up for us to be able to start asking ourselves, what are those food areas we need to grow and grow more in order that if anything happens anywhere in the world, we have to be self-sustaining and we have to also have enough for export. You know, if we'll be talking about having enough for export, in order for us to have enough revenue, we need to identify those particular agricultural products that we have advantage over many other countries and grow them and have systemic growth from one level to another in order for us to have a target to start exporting these items, in order for us to grow our revenue base arising from this. We are blessed with a lot of cash crops in this country, and many countries cannot see the kind of cash crops that we have. And so we have sesame seeds, we have cashew nuts, we have rice, we have palm oil.
I'm here speaking on behalf of my country. I'm here speaking on behalf of my compatriots. We have come here to this forum where more than 190 representatives come to deliver their message from different cultures, different governments, different ideologies, different social situations, different economic, climatic and geographical situations. However, the fact that all of us are here means that somewhat a long time ago we agreed to work together to achieve the same rights, obligations and principles. On international law with not much coercive power, where often the same bar is not applied to the larger countries than is applied to smaller ones. We are back here at the Assembly with a positive vision, an optimistic vision of humanity. However, we objectively must say we live in a better world because, of course, nevertheless we still have challenges to overcome. We are convinced that globalization, ICT, artificial intelligence, real-time communication, all of these things are tools that help for integration and development for our people. Of course, if these tools are used well. We are seeing a growing responsibility of global leaders. Earlier, I heard the United Nations Secretary General emphasize this matter. We are living in a world of a lot of words without actions. Where here, a global leader can bring about consequences with just his words, an international conflict, banking matters, etc., etc. Uruguay has come here to this assembly with a full, stable democracy, with full respect for institutions and the law, which is an historic tradition in our country. And despite the pandemic, despite the Russian invasion, despite different climatic factors, our country's economy has recovered to what it was before the pandemic. Employment has improved, unemployment has decreased, we have historic public investment in infrastructure, and significant direct foreign investment has been received, and a lot has been invested in our country, which shows the significant amount of trust. Our public finances are in good order. Inflation is at an 18-year low. Taxes have been able to be decreased, and at the same time we have undertaken reforms that had been urgent for a long time, such as educational reform and reform to social security. The Uruguayan people have a responsible sense of freedom. Today, when I was writing some of my speech, I remembered what I said here in September 2021. The end of my speech said that the pandemic had reminded us that all of us were one. And for this reason, we are all one. And so, based on that, I wish to refer to the responsible freedom, international responsible freedom, liberty. It is clear that our well-being as countries, our independent countries, is intrinsically linked to the common good. We need to be aware of this, accept it, and act as a result. Since early on, a lot of heads of states here have referred to the environment. I belong to a country that was classified and given the name Natural Uruguay a few years ago. Renewable energies in our country represent more than 90%. We have significant reforestation. We have sustainable production processes. And I could continue with a long list that underpins this concept of natural Uruguay. After many years of statements and commitments made, the international community really understood that the economy and the environment were intrinsically linked to one another. Uruguay, a few months ago, issued a sustainable bond that is based on prizes and punishments, penalties, depending on the level of compliance with the Paris Agreement. And here I wish to draw your attention to the fact that we are convinced, we understand that this system of benefits and penalties should be applied to international loans, for example, market access, quotas and tariffs. It is not just our vocation to punish lack of compliance, but rather to reward those who engage in processes that are environmentally friendly and that are sustainable. In this way, just like it is when we are children, there are incentives to improve. And this would mean that nations would make more efforts in their domestic economies and also globally. In this same vein, I wish to share a situation that my country is going through with you, and I'm sure your nations are probably going through the same thing. I think we can call this the sin of doing things well. And what am I talking about when I talk about this sin of doing things well? Well, my country has achieved a level of significant human and economic development. And thanks to reaching these standards, often we do not benefit from systems of cooperation, from preferences, for example, instruments for international trade support. And of course, I would be remiss not to share the spirit with which these mechanisms were created, but I do think that we need to take a fresh look at them, because often countries grow and then they lose access to these conditions. I wish to make it clear that Uruguay is not coming here to beg or make exaggerated claims. However, simply what I was referring to, responsible international liberty, I think that it's necessary to act with justice. If we do things well, we should act as a consequence of this, and this means nothing less and nothing more than improving access to opportunities. Just to wrap up, because I know you've had a long day, I wish once again here at this forum, like others have done, to firmly condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine and express our solidarity to the Ukrainian people. Further, I wish to agree with the Secretary-General, the United Nations Secretary-General, and raise our voice against authoritarian populism that are bringing impoverishment to their peoples, violating human rights, and condemning current and future generations. Once again, perhaps here we should engage in a mea culpa, because often the absence of a robust and effective reaction from the international community has led to us not avoiding these types of situations. Thank you very much.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale,
on behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Uruguay, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Petr Pavel, President